What up, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Football Ultimate Patriots podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dennis T, and recording from my medical office in Dedham, Massachusetts. Joining me, as always, the CEO of Hedge Better, Justin Fine. Justin, I'm going to say something right now that I didn't think I would be saying again for a very, very long time, and that is your New England Patriots, our New England Patriots, are officially Super Bowl bound this week. I still cannot believe it. They won 14 games. We knew it was possible as the year developed, but I don't think any of us really thought they would make the Super Bowl so quick in this rebuild. And here we are, year one of the Mike Vrabel era, year two of the Drake May era. The Patriots are bound for San Francisco. It is unbelievable.
It's so unbelievable. Look, when we first started, doing shows in the off season and then week one, I don't think either of us thought we'd be sitting here talking about the Patriots playing in the Super Bowl this year. Absolutely ridiculous. And then, when you think about the historic run that we went on for 2 decades, you think about teams that have never even been to a Super Bowl, never even won a Super Bowl, teams that have gone 20, 30 years without making it back to a Super Bowl. I think it would have been kind of foolish for us to expect this quick of a turnaround. We knew the potential was always there once we had Vrabel in May, but I don't think any of us expected this quickly to be going back to the Super Bowl.
Look, absolutely not. And going into the season, I think Drake May showed us a lot last year in terms of, if you really looked at his performance, he looked good. They were still a 4-13 team. Right. Drake May still didn't win a lot of games. That was one of the real question marks going into this season. Could this guy actually win? Yeah, he looked okay at times. And we were all, even the most optimistic among us, we were like, 10, 11, 12 wins. When we did the schedule run through in May, I think we came to 12 or 13 wins and we were both kind of laughing about it. Well, there's no way that's going to happen. Yeah. And then in the reality, they won 14 games and they won 3 playoff games.
Yeah, 100%. And, one quick thing I just want to touch on, because it's funny, how at the end of the year, you look back and how everything winds up playing out. After week one, not only did we think that this team had a long way to come, which they did in all fairness, but we talked all year about how that loss to the Raiders could potentially bite them in the butt, right? In terms of getting the number 1 seed, in terms of how that would play out in their postseason rankings and performance. Isn't that a blessing now, looking back on it, that they lost to the Raiders week one? You think about how it played out. You avoid the Bills in the divisional round. You get the Broncos with Justin Stidham. It actually was something that I think at the time we were super disappointed on. We thought it was going to screw us the season, but it really came down to just benefiting the crap out of us.
Yeah, it's hard to look back on that and even think that this team somehow lost to that Raiders team. Yeah. When you see how the season played out, right? Like it's actually mind blowing. It feels like unimaginable at this point because that Raiders team ended up being so bad. Pete Carroll obviously one and done, and the Patriots just looked, so out of sync in the second half of that game. And, as I've famously discussed on this podcast multiple times, my decision to cash out my Patriots win the Super Bowl bet after that Raiders game, I put $50 on the Patriots to win the Super Bowl in June. And I was going to win $4,000 if the Patriots won the Super Bowl. And I cashed that ticket out after that Raiders game. So get the biggest, most giant dose of medicine you can possibly muster up for me possible, because that is looming to be one of the stupidest, worst decisions that I've ever made, and I'm just regretting and going to eat that choice so bad. But that's how bad I think we all felt as Patriots fans after that Raiders loss. And yet here we are 17 wins later and going to Santa Clara.
Yeah. And you know what? This Patriots team, I think they proved a lot of people wrong. I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but we had to deal with all year, the talk about the schedule. all the cakewalk that everyone was saying this team had, that they weren't for real. But look, this team played NFL teams week in and week out. They finished with the record they did, including some good wins in Buffalo, in Baltimore. They go into the playoffs. They become the first team in NFL history to beat 3 top 5 defenses in a row in the playoffs, on their way to a Super Bowl. So you know what? I mean, what can people really say now? I think you got to put some respect in this team. They're one of the best defenses in the league now at the end of the year. They've really rounded out. And their quarterback hasn't even played his best.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a Super Bowl caliber defense. That's what I would say.
Yes.
And that can't be questioned right now. You know, the offense, I think, still needs a lot of work. You know, the easy schedule thing, that was something we've talked a lot about throughout the course of the year. At the end of the day, they've now won 3 straight games against AFC playoff teams. So, you know, I think that you can kind of put that narrative to bed, in my opinion. Obviously, you know, you could look at every one of those wins and say, oh, you know, they didn't have Nico Collins. Oh, Bo Nix was hurt. And that's all fair and fine. But in this year, where is the dominant super team? It doesn't exist. So I think for them to go out and beat an 11-win team, and a 14-win team on the way to the Super Bowl, that says a lot about the fact that this team, I think, very much deserves to be where they are right now.
They do. You know, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but they've allowed what? In those 3 games, they allowed 2 touchdowns in 3 games. You know, they held their opponents in check. I know weather has been a factor. I know the other team starting quarterback has been a factor. But look, when you win 3 playoff games against top 5 defenses and only give up 2 offensive touchdowns as a defensive unit, you're doing something right, and you got to be taken seriously.
100%. And look, we say it every year. It's said every year. It's one of the biggest cliches in professional sports. Defense wins championships. Defense wins championships. Defense wins championships. Well, guess what? Whatever you want to say about this offense, and we're going to get into the Drake May thing in a little bit. We're going to get into this offense and why maybe they haven't looked so good. I don't see how anyone out there could look now at this defense and not say that this is not a Super Bowl caliber defense, but arguably one of the better defensive units we've seen in the league in the last, 5 or so years, when you really look at how they performed down the stretch.
I completely agree. This defense is dominant. They've gotten better as the season has gone on. And now that they're healthy, they've put it together in the playoffs for honestly what I consider to be a pretty remarkable run.
Yeah, they're dominant, and it's not a fluke. Like it's authentic. It's the combination of, I think, a terrific front seven that they rebuilt like on the fly, because that was one of our big concerns going into the year, and especially Milton Williams, who, if you haven't noticed, and I said this maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago on the podcast, and I should take a victory lap on this because it's 100% accurate. This guy is like Aaron Donald. He's playing at that level. He is an absolute game disruptor, perhaps like no one else in this league. Just an absolute grand slam of a free agent signing in Milton Williams. And when you take a player like that and you put him on your defensive line, and then you've got another great defensive lineman in Barmore right next to him, and then you've got a couple really good linebackers and other defensive linemen to round out that front seven, and then you have a shutdown cornerback that takes away half the field every week. That right there is a really, really strong foundation for a really good defense. And that's why they're such a good defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it. The front seven has been great. And one of the things that, this team has done in these 3 playoff games, and this was kind of one of the big knocks and big concerns that even we had with this defense, was their ability to generate turnovers, right? Yeah. It was something that they weren't particularly good at. Even when the defense was playing well in the regular season, they weren't really good at generating turnovers. We said that was something that would have to change. They've now generated 8 turnovers in the last 3 games. You can say maybe the weather was a part of that, but that defense is seriously coming through in a big way. They're playing their best football of the year when it counts the most.
They're playing their best football when it counts, and they're making big turnovers. And if you look back at all 3 of these playoff games, every single one of them had a huge turnover at a key spot. And let's face it, including this week in Denver, the Patriots probably don't win this game if they don't make that play, the fumble recovery that really should have been a scoop and score, but wasn't a scoop and score because of a terrible call. But if they don't make that play, Justin, I mean, who knows if they even win this game?
Yeah, I mean, you got a fumble recovery that, like you said, was absolutely huge. The pick at the end to all but seal the game. And then the blocked field goal, which at the time, I texted you guys after. I didn't even realize that was a blocked field goal. A practice squad player that you signed earlier in the year, you elevated him for this game, and he comes up making a huge play. The turnovers were a huge factor, not only in the AFC Championship game, but really the entire playoff run.
All 3 playoff games. Okay, so look, I want to actually, we haven't even got into the roster of topics that I wanted to bring up, but this is great just to have so much to be excited about. But I want to start with this. And I think, look, I think obviously the lead story is the fact that the Patriots have made the Super Bowl. And what I want to say about this is just very simply, like, I respect Seattle. You know that. You can go back to our week 3 episode of the podcast. I told you, watch out for Seattle. No one was respecting that team. All fine. Listen, really good Seattle Seahawks team, really good defense. Okay. Don't tell me that this is a super team. This is not a super team. And that is what I want to start with. This is a winnable Super Bowl. The Patriots are underdogs in this game. They should be underdogs in this game, I think, in all fairness. But the difference between these two teams is not great. Sam Darnold led the NFL in turnovers going up against this great defense. I really feel like this is pretty close to a 50-50 game. This is a very winnable Super Bowl matchup for the Pats.
I think it's super winnable. I think the Patriots are getting extremely disrespected right now. And I think as good as this Seattle team has played, you're 100% right. They're not a super team. I'm sorry. I know Sam Darnold had a good year. I know Sam Darnold's played well in the playoffs. I am still not ready to give Sam Darnold the respect that everybody else is giving him, unless he goes out and does it in a championship game against a Super Bowl caliber defense. I'm just not there yet. And I still consider him a talented loser, Sam Darnold. Maybe he'll prove me wrong in 2 weeks. But you look at the Patriots' run to the playoffs. Our bread and butter has been a combination of bum quarterbacks and elite defenses. We've gone up against Justin Herbert in the Chargers defense, CJ Stroud in the Texans defense, Jarrett Stidham in the Broncos defense, 3 bum quarterbacks, 3 elite defenses. And I'm sorry, I don't think that's changing in the Super Bowl. I still consider Sam Darnold fragile in one bad play away from totally unraveling, in peeing down his shorts. And obviously Seattle does have a good defense, but that doesn't scare me.
See, I think you have to give Sam Darnold respect for what he's done the last 2 years. And I know, so I'm not going to be one of these guys that waits for a guy to not win the Super Bowl to call him a bum. Like, I'm sorry. Sam Darnold has had back-to-back 14-win seasons. There's only one other quarterback in NFL history to do that. Do you know who it is? It's Tom Brady. He's the only other one.
All right.
Okay. He's won 30 games the last 2 seasons. His record, including postseason the last 2 years, is 30-7. He just won 2 postseason games. If Sam Darnold goes out and plays a bad game against the Patriots and loses the Super Bowl, I'm still not holding that against him. Like, to me, he's not a talented loser. Like, I think you have to give him some respect for what he's accomplished the last couple of years. Now, all that said, what I would tell Patriots fans to think about and look out for is the fact that what the Seattle Seahawks did the last 2 weeks in the postseason came against 2 really bad defenses. The Rams have been a really bad defense the last 6 weeks. They haven't been able to stop anyone for the most part. And then the 49ers are a beat up defense that we all know has had really big problems on the defensive side of the ball pretty much the whole season because of their injury situation. So Sam Darnold is not as good as he's looked the last 2 weeks. As I said, he led the league in turnovers. And I think that, this is a situation where the Patriots defense, I think, can come out and really win this game again on Sunday, force turnovers, make plays, and not give up a lot of points.
So, and I agree with that. And look, I give Sam Darnold respect in the sense that he's obviously a talented quarterback and he's played really well. But I guess where I differ is the fact that when I think of truly elite quarterbacks, I think of those as being blue chip guys that are going to play some of their best football when the lights are the brightest and the stage is the biggest, right? Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and some of the all-time greats that in Super Bowl Sunday you can count on to have a great game. We can't say that about Sam Darnold. He's played well in the past. He's played well in the regular season. He's obviously improved from where we thought he was a few years ago. But I can't say confidently that Sam Darnold is going to go out there and look great on Super Bowl Sunday. And I think that's why I feel confident that the Patriots defense can go out there and expose him.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, there's two different things in there. You're right. There's no way Sam Darnold should be considered an elite quarterback. And anyone that tries to make him one is totally disingenuous. Just look at his performance this year. 25 touchdowns, 14 picks, a 99 rating with a lot of talent around him. I mean, he's good. He's winning games, but he's not elite. Right. So I 10,000% agree. He has no business being mentioned anywhere near the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. I just think he's a better quarterback than you're giving him credit for. That's all I'm saying.
And that's fair. And you know what? He has a chance to go out on the biggest stage with the brightest lights against one of the best defenses in the league and prove me wrong. And I'll give him his flowers if he does that. But I just feel optimistic that the combination of the moment being big, or as big as it's going to be in 2 weeks, and the defense of the Patriots being as good as they are, gives me confidence that the Patriots will find a way to win that game, and Sam Darnold will not be at his best.
I think they're going to give Sam Darnold fits this weekend, Justin. Yeah. I think Sam Darnold's going to have a bad game. I think he's going to give the Patriots a couple turnovers this week. Yeah. But I still think what he's done the last 2 seasons deserves to some extent respect for the fact that this guy is a really good NFL quarterback. He's a top 10, top 12 quarterback in this league from a guy that was really plucked off the scrap heap and did nothing. And like, hey, look, how do you think the Minnesota Vikings feel today? We talked about this at some point mid-season, but like, I'm sorry, they let this guy walk out of the building to roll with JJ McCarthy because they took JJ McCarthy in the 7th, 8th pick in the draft, right? Doubled down on that mistake. And then, let this guy walk away for nothing. Yeah. And now I think it's very much in doubt if McCarthy can play in this league, if he can stay healthy in this league. And Darnold looks like he's at worst a solid starting quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. And my knock on Darnold this entire time has been, what's his ceiling? Sure, you might win 12, 13, 14 games, but what's his ceiling as you as a franchise with him as your starting quarterback? If he goes out and beats the Patriots, he's going to shut me right up, because my argument was that your ceiling was always beneath the Super Bowl. And if he goes out and does that, then he proves me wrong. His ceiling is a Super Bowl.
I think his ceiling, I think 2 years ago, we would have said his ceiling was he's a backup quarterback or a fringe player in the league.
Yeah.
So for a guy to be able to elevate himself to back-to-back 14-win seasons, I think that in of itself is, look, only one team wins the Super Bowl every year.
Yeah.
That's it. And this may be a little before your time, but Peyton Manning was considered a loser for almost a decade. Peyton Manning didn't win a Super Bowl until his 8th or 9th year. He couldn't win in the postseason. He had bad playoff loss after bad playoff loss after bad playoff loss. And I guess my point is, I'm just saying, just because someone doesn't win the Super Bowl doesn't mean that they're not a very good player. And I think that whatever happens on Sunday, Sam Darnold should be considered a very good player. But I agree with you that the Patriots are going to give him fits. And I don't think Sam Darnold will have a good game against the Patriots on Sunday. I think he's going to look more like the bad Sam Darnold.
I agree. And one more thing, just I guess in Sam Darnold's defense, right? The kid came into the league at like 19 years old, very young, right, to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. High draft pick, all the pressure on his shoulders. He's has to deal with the absolute dysfunctional, 2 of the most dysfunctional franchises at the time. The Jets, who are still one of the most dysfunctional franchises, and then the Panthers, who have kind of gotten their crap together a little bit over the last few years. But when he was there, again, super dysfunctional. So he comes in at 19 years old, all the pressure on his shoulders, bops around to the Jets and Panthers. I think that stunted his growth and set him back more than it helped him develop. So I think really when he got to Minnesota and started working with Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson and that group, that I think was kind of like the kickstart to his professional development as an NFL quarterback.
It 10,000% was, Justin. And I do want to say that I think what I would say to you and to a lot of Patriots fans like you, thinking like you about Sam Darnold is you're missing the point. And the point is that what Sam Darnold has happened to him in the last 2 years is great evidence, great fuel that we can use to look down upon the New York Jets as being the ultimate trash organization of trash organizations. The fact that this guy was a Super Bowl caliber quarterback that they drafted and then completely ruined by doing what they did, basically tanking for 2 seasons, surrounding him with bad coaches, bad players, a bad organization, and then to watch how this guy has blossomed when he's gotten away from the vortex of suck that is the New York Jets franchise. That is Patriots fan food, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And look, the kid is definitely proving a lot of people wrong. Obviously I might be being a little harsh on him. We'll see in 2 weeks what happens, but I don't think there's any doubt that the progression in growth he's shown in the last couple of years definitely, I think, has put him on track of being, considered a talented quarterback. And I think he's proven he's a franchise quarterback right now.
And it's insane that he's the first quarterback from the 2018 draft class to make a Super Bowl. How insane is that Josh Allen hasn't made a Super Bowl yet? Darnold has. That's great. All right. I want to talk a little bit about another thing that we've mentioned a few other times, but I think it's really relevant because, as you know, the NFL decides the Hall of Fame class this week. And both Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick are up for consideration. And my hope, and I almost want to start a petition online and put it on our Facebook page, but my hope is that they'll do the right thing and put them both in together. But I think that we've talked a little bit on the podcast before about Robert Kraft's Hall of Fame candidacy and how Robert Kraft is viewed by the rest of the league and why Robert Kraft hasn't gotten into the Hall of Fame. And I'm sorry, when you look at what happened with this team this year and getting to another Super Bowl, that is, in my opinion, a huge feather in the cap of Robert Kraft in terms of his legacy, in terms of his Hall of Fame, Justin, candidacy, and the fact that he had the stones to fire Gerard Mayo after 1 season is one of the best decisions an NFL owner has made, I think, in recent memory. And Robert Kraft completely deserves the right to take a victory lap this week. And Justin, how insane is it that Kraft has not made a Super Bowl and Brady has won a Super Bowl and Bill Belichick is not even in the league right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's very insane, but I think you're 100% right. I mean, look, obviously I don't think anyone's going to disagree. Belichick should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And you're right. Robert Kraft, he not only turned the organization around, but I get it. You had Brady, you had Belichick, and that was a big part of it. But to keep everything together from the top for 2 decades, overhauling the roster multiple times, keeping the peace for as long as possible between Brady and Belichick, allowing the organization to become arguably the most successful NFL franchise in history, and then doing it all over again now with a new coach and a new quarterback. It really is amazing. I think you'd be hard pressed, I think, to find another owner in the league that has the resume that Robert Kraft has. And hopefully they do. They do put them both in the Hall of Fame.
Justin, he has made 11 Super Bowls in 32 years.
Yeah, he's got a better than a 33% success rate of making the Super Bowl as an owner.
And he's done it now with 3 different regimes, right?
Yes.
The Parcells, Bledsoe, Brady, Belichick, obviously, that's legendary. And now May and Vrabel. And I just think that people need to appreciate, he's not been right, obviously, about every decision he's made. Like the Gerard Mayo thing was a disaster. He stepped in it big time. He really screwed that up. But this guy is an excellent owner. Robert Kraft is an excellent owner. He generally does right by this organization. And I just think I've watched football for a long time. I've been a fan of this league for over 3 decades. And a lot of these owners, they're just really afraid to do the right thing because they're afraid of what the media is going to say. They're afraid of what the fans are going to say. Robert Kraft stuck his neck out to bring in Mike Vrabel, and he took so much crap for it. He made himself look bad because he was so outspoken about how much he loved Gerard Mayo. And everyone was dumping on this guy just 1 year ago, right? Yep. Who's dumping on him now? That, my friend, is leadership. That is excellent ownership. And it's why the Patriots are consistently at the top of the league. I mean, you can't discount it.
Yeah, I mean, it's true leadership. We talk about all the reasons the Patriots are in the Super Bowl this year. You can talk about Vrabel being a great head coach. You can talk about May becoming one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You can talk about the defense playing at a championship level. But all of those pieces are put into place by Robert Kraft. Like you said, when his back was against the wall, when it was really tough to make a decision like he did at that time, he did it. And to your point, this is now the third regime that he's taken to a Super Bowl. So you know what, when you talk about why the Patriots are where they're at, there's a lot of reasons, but it starts with him.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons, right? We know the biggest reason is they lucked into the best quarterback that ever lived in the 6th round. I mean, that helps. Belichick is arguably, one of the best coaches, or he was in his prime. Like, we can go through all of it, but I'm just saying, like, the stability, there's a reason why the Patriots and the Steelers are, and some of these other teams are always kind of in it, right? And then there are teams like the Jets and the Cardinals and the Bengals, and, they just can't get out of their own way. Like, this is the ownership thing, maybe from year to year, it doesn't matter. But if you look at big picture, it's a big factor and who's successful consistently. Let's talk, Justin, a little bit about Drake May, because that's one of the other hot topics this month. This week, I'm sure you got a lot to say about his performance. I know just from texting with you on Sunday that you weren't too thrilled with the way he played. So what are your thoughts on what Drake May did and how he's been in this postseason so far?
So, I mean, before I get to the negatives, I want to say that there's a couple really big positives to touch on, right? The first is the fact that, in a game like that, against a defense like that, in weather, which was arguably the harshest conditions we've seen all year, including the Texans game and whatnot, he had no turnovers, which was the key to us winning that game, right? Drake May not turning the ball over a single time is arguably just as important as anything else that happened on Championship Sunday. The second thing is he showed his true athleticism and his mobility and used his legs where his arm was kind of failing him and made big play after big play on the ground, including the game-sealing scramble at the end and the little bootleg out to the weak side. So 2 huge positives. What I will say, and again, you could talk about the weather. Maybe that was a factor. Drake May, as far as him passing the ball, being a pocket passer on Sunday, it was one of the worst I've seen him look. I mean, the accuracy that had been a hallmark of his entire 2025 campaign was not there. He missed a bunch of easy throws. He looked at times uncomfortable in the pocket. Did he make the big plays when it counted on his feet? Yes. Did he keep the ball safe from not turn the ball over? Yes. But there's a couple games now where we just haven't seen May play his best. I'll wrap that all up by saying I actually think in the Super Bowl he plays his best game of the playoffs.
Agree with that. I think you're going to see much better from him in the Super Bowl. I just have a feeling. Look, I think that a couple things about what we saw from Drake May the last couple weeks, and I think, yes, he's played 3 top 5 defenses, and I don't think you can say enough about that. And he's taken 15 sacks, he's fumbled 6 times. And he's throwing 2 picks, really 1 pick, because one was a Hail Mary before the half. But all of that said, Drake May is showing us a few things in spite of the fact that his performance hasn't been great. Number one is he's making plays when it counts. Like when they need a play, whether it's with his arm or his legs, he's finding a way to do it. And that isn't something we've just seen in the postseason. That's been all year. He makes 3 to 5 plays a game that are excellent game-winning plays. He's resilient and tough. Even when things go wrong, he's still hanging in there and he's getting it done. So I'm not saying he's playing great. I'm not even, frankly, 100% sold on him as a true top 5 quarterback, if I'm being totally honest, especially what I've seen the last 3 weeks. But I do think that he's showing a lot in some ways that I think his performance is better than it appears on the surface, if that makes sense. Yeah. And the other thing I would say to everyone, and you might agree with this, is like this offense, forgetting Drake May, is still really not that good. Like their offensive line is a problem. Will Campbell is a problem. I'm worried about Will Campbell. He was a little better this week, but they still struggle to protect Drake May. And that's an issue. And these receivers stink. And I know we disagree about that, but like they're okay. Don't get me wrong. But when you put them up against good defenses, I'm sorry, there is no separation. Like I didn't really, May missed a few throws on Sunday. I didn't really feel like guys were running wide open either.
It was a tough day for the offense. Like you said, I mean, you're going up against a good defense. The conditions are tough. Guys didn't really seem to be open a ton. With that being said, though, I do think, I like you said, May was resilient, and I do think that things are going to get better. And I think, again, this offense is going to have their best performance in the Super Bowl. But there are positives, right? I think getting a guy like Matt Collins back, someone that we debated whether he should be cut in the offseason, he has time and time again made big play after big play this season, including 2 very big plays on Sunday, the flea flicker, and then that third down catch from inside their own their own 20-yard line, I believe, in the earlier in the game. Ramondre Stevenson, someone that I've been super critical about, taking care of the ball, continuing to be steady in the backfield. So I do think that they have enough in this offense. But to get to Will Campbell is worrying me. Now, look, I know he's a rookie. I know he's coming off a pretty bad MCL sprain. A lot of people said, if the conditions of this team were different this year, he would have been out the rest of the season. So I don't want to overlook that, but he is worrying me. But first I didn't, we kind of laughed at the fact that maybe his size and his length, were hindering him and whatnot, but against elite pass rushers and elite defenses, he's having problems. I think,
and that's been all year too. It's not just been the postseason. Like, look what Myles Garrett did to him, and then not enough is said. Look what Atlanta in the second half of that Atlanta game he struggled. So
he did. I'm starting to think what you have in Will Campbell is one of the best guards in the league that you can swing out and play tackle if need be. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I hope that's in fact what he is. I just hope he's not a kind of a missed draft pick, because honestly, like, I mean, I hate to say this because I love his attitude and the way he speaks, and I don't want to close the book on him yet, but what I've seen from this guy in his rookie year, there is no way that I could say that taking him with the number 4 pick was justified, based on what I've seen so far. And I think they would have been better off with the guy from the Jets, who was a right tackle, granted, but this guy is not. When you draft someone, especially a lineman, with a top 5 draft pick, you're expecting a guy to come in and I think be able to play almost from the beginning and be really good. Right. I mean, he just hasn't been that.
No, he hasn't. And again, he's a rookie. He's dealing with the bad injury. He's consistently been playing top defenses the last couple of weeks. So you can't close the book on him. You do gotta see what next year brings. He is going up against 2 really good edge rushers in Seattle in the Super Bowl.
He is, right? But he's supposed to be someone that can do that. Right. You took him with the 4 pick in the draft.
Yeah, no, I know. And
if I want a Vidarian Lowe, you can find a guy like that and pluck him in from the middle rounds of the free agent scrap heap, and you can get what Will Campbell's been giving you from a Vidarian Lowe or any number of places. Like you invest a top 5 pick, you're expecting a guy that's a Pro Bowl caliber player.
You can, and I also wonder too. I know Ramondre Stevenson's been really good. But is he actually having a ripple effect on this offense? Because we haven't seen much of TreVeyon Henderson the last couple of weeks. And I think, from what we saw earlier in the season with TreVeyon Henderson, he earned the right to get his run in this offense, and he's capable of making big explosive plays. But does his struggle with blocking and help chip in the blitzers, like, is that why Stevenson's been playing like a disproportionate amount because they're not trusting Will Campbell to keep Drake May protected? I don't know.
Right, because as explosive as Henderson is, all we heard about him coming in was, he's a great blocker. He's a great blocker. He really at the pro level has not been a good blocker. And Stevenson is a much better pass blocker. So, to have that safety net for May where it's been such an issue, is that why they are going away from Stevenson? I mean, Henderson, I feel like he barely saw the field on Sunday.
He did. And it's ironic too, because, one of the books on Henderson, and he kind of proved it for the most part this year, is that he doesn't fumble. He takes care of the ball. And can you think of a game in which ball security this year has been more important than the one on Denver? So You would have thought he would have got his mix, especially with how heavily they were working Ramondre. The fact that he wasn't out there, I think that might be due to the fact that they couldn't trust him to block, and they didn't trust Will Campbell as the first line of defense.
Yeah, it's a big problem. I know that, the kind of buzz this week, a lot of people saying, oh, Campbell looked a little better, but I don't think he looked that much better. And I just feel like, honestly, Seattle has one of the best pass rushes in the league. I think they were third in the NFL in sacks. And that's the thing I'm probably most worried about going into the Super Bowl. I just saw what Houston did to Campbell. I saw now what Denver did to him, and I'm worried about the left side of that line, and especially Will Campbell against good defensive ends from Seattle. And then, Justin, the receivers, I got to say, I don't want to just glance on that. Like, they still don't have a number one wide receiver. So if you add it all up, I guess to bring it back to Drake May, my point is that Drake May is an A. I don't know if he's an A plus. I think he's an A. But this is a C plus offense with an A quarterback. And that A quarterback is making enough plays for them to win games. But when they play really good teams, they don't have the talent elsewhere on this roster, I think, to go blow for blow with really good defenses. There's just too many holes on that line. There's too many deficiencies in that wide receiver group. The lack of a number one wide receiver being the biggest one. And I think that's why they've struggled more than anything.
I mean, I think you're right. I do think this receiver group has played better than we expected, but to your point, they definitely have their shortcomings, and you still don't have a number one. Stephon Diggs has been good at times, but he hasn't been consistently a dominant number one. He's had his flashes. Booty's had his flashes. I mean, guys have made, like Mac Hollins, like we said, they've made big plays, but nobody's consistently been that that go-to number one guy, and it's been a problem. The one thing I will say is that as much hype as this Seahawks defense is getting, if I'm ranking the last, three opponents, including the Seahawks, the Broncos, and the Texans, I think the Seahawks are the third best defense out of the three, personally. Yep. So that still gives me hope that, hey, as good as this defense is, and as lackluster this offense has been at times, they're going to finally be going and playing in some nice weather out in Santa Clara. And hopefully this is an opportunity to bounce back against what should be a weaker defense than you played in the last two games.
Yeah, I mean, that's the positive spin, and I think that's what we're all hoping. I have a weird gut feeling that Drake May is going to look way better out in the Super Bowl. And I don't know why. I just feel like, I thought that, just if I was going to, just to be like positive, like in some ways May had an excellent performance against a really good Texans defense last week. It's just he fumbled. But if you take away the fumbles, when he threw the ball, like that was really elite what he was able to do in the air with those, especially the 3 touchdown passes he threw. So I just have a feeling May is going to look a lot better in good weather with 2 weeks to prepare. That's just my gut.
I 100% agree. My gut says the same thing. And look, I know I said he missed a couple throws and obviously the weather was a factor. I think the Broncos got the best secondary in the league. So that was no easy task going into Denver in an AFC Championship game facing that secondary. So I really feel like in all senses of outcomes, the Super Bowl Sunday is going to be an improvement in terms of the conditions that this offense is going to be going up against, from weather to opponent, health, etc., everything.
Yep. I agree 100%. You just kind of grazed on something that I think we need to talk about before we move to around the league, and that is the coaching from Sunday, because I thought that was exceptional. And to me, it almost felt like a Belichick in his prime type situation, what we saw from Vrabel, where like Sean Payton is a damn good football coach. And I thought Mike Vrabel outcoached him on Sunday in a lot of ways. In the first half of this game, just to give an example, I was so frustrated with the fact that it felt like the Patriots were afraid to put the ball in May's hand. It felt like they were kind of holding him back. As the game went on, I realized that was actually good coaching, that there was a reason for that. And that was because of the pass rush, the inability to protect, the fact that our receivers couldn't get open. Vrabel coached this game the way that he had to win this game. I thought he played it right. I thought that he outcoached Peyton. And, I thought that if they were going to vote on coach of the year right now, I know those votes are already done because they vote after the regular season. They shouldn't, but they do. Is there any doubt that based on what we've seen in this playoff run and certainly on Sunday, that Mike Vrabel is the coach of the year?
There's no doubt in my mind. I think, like you said, he had another terrific performance on Sunday. He is the coach of the year. I mean, look, he's one of the final two teams. You can argue that he's done the most with the least, even though this Patriots roster is a little bit better than we gave him credit for. He is truly, I think, the reason why this team is coming out and performing as good as they are. He's definitely the reason that the defense is playing as well as they are. He's helping McDaniels keep this offense in check. He's making smart decisions. And he has them ready to play each week in a way that we haven't seen, I think, since the Belichick era.
Yeah. Well, since the prime of the Belichick era.
Exactly.
Belichick at the end was a big problem.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. And like, how about this? Like, you look at the culture that this guy has built, and like, we can talk about the X's and O's stuff, and that's been amazing. And I don't think you need to be a football expert or anything like that to see just with your eye as a fan that what we saw last year with Gerard Mayo was like, not good X's and O's. And what we've seen this year with Vrabel and McDaniel is literally as good X's and O's as you could have, generally speaking. And that's really how I feel. But take that all aside, look at which has been amazing. Look at the culture this guy has built. And it's like amazing to me. It's amazing to me that 2 years ago, this franchise was still, smashing two rocks together to start a fire with the old Bill Belichick method, the old hard guy, tough guy, the old way of doing things, and that just completely toxic locker room culture with Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi and Belichick and that whole mess, right? That was 2 years ago. That was 3 years ago. Now, look at what Vrabel has built in that locker room this year. And it's a huge part of why he's the coach of the year. It's a huge part of why they're going to San Francisco. The culture is amazing.
Not only is the culture amazing, but I think this is now a full circle moment for us, right? Or just, for this team in general, because in the offseason at the beginning of this year, we sat here and we talked about for a roster that needed as much talent as they could get. He came in and he made some pretty big moves in terms of guys he cut and traded away, right? Yep. I mean, he cuts Andrews, he cuts Juwan Bentley, he ships out Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, Cardona, a couple others, right? Like staples of the Patriots organization. And we said to ourselves at the time, this team needs all the talent and help they can get in depth. I really hope he knows what he's doing. It was all, I think, now to look back on it, part of his culture fit. And his culture fit, well, like you said, wound up being arguably the most key element in terms of getting this team to playing where they're playing in getting back to the Super Bowl. So I think he earned our trust by making some of those shock moves at the beginning of the season where it's gotten us.
He did. And I don't think it's in any way like hyperbole to say that in 2 seasons they went, and really in 1 season, because it wasn't any, Mayo's culture was a mess last year. In 1 or 2 seasons, they went from the worst locker room in the National Football League, infighting, backstabbing, division, to the best locker room. That's not in any way an overstatement.
It's not. I mean, Gerard Mayo called them soft last year, right? Like, and they were soft. And obviously part of that was Gerard Mayo's fault, but there was, for the first time in New England, something we hadn't seen in decades, which was a true culture problem in the Patriots locker room. And he nipped it in the bud. He brought the right guys in, he shipped the right guys out, and he totally did a complete 180 in terms of getting this Patriots team unified and playing for each other.
Yes, and the other piece of this too, and you kind of just hit on this, and I don't think we talk about this enough, is Mike Vrabel, the GM. And like, yes, we have talked many times on this podcast about all the guys he has cut from the previous regime, and you just listed the whole bunch of them, right? But how about the guys that he kept? Right? Yeah. Because we don't talk enough about that. Right. Like, look at this roster. Ramondre Stevenson, Kayshon Boutte, Hunter Henry, Mike Onwenu, Christian Barmore, Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones. He didn't get rid of everyone.
Right.
He just picked and chose the right ones to get rid of.
Exactly.
And the ones he kept are, by the way, a huge part of what they've done here this year.
Exactly. it almost was like when he was going through, he was dissecting, with the scalpel, not a butcher knife, right? He went in there and he said, "Hey, I'm not deciding who stays and who goes based on talent. I'm deciding who stays and who goes based on culture and team fit and who I can trust to be leaders and have a positive impact on and off the field." And he made the right choices.
Yes, he did. He made the right choices, and he has gotten the best out of a lot of guys that were kind of loitering here. And like, look, I'm just going to say this. When we started recording this podcast 3 or 4 years ago, we talked a lot about how bad Belichick, the GM, was. Yeah. I think one of my take homes from this season is that Belichick, the coach, was worse than Belichick, the GM, at the end. Because there were talented players that were on this roster, and Belichick just couldn't get the most out of them. That's the truth of the situation.
He couldn't. I mean, I think, look, Belichick at the end, he wasn't coaching to the team he had. He brought in guys like Matt Patricia to experiment as offensive coordinator. Like, there was just a lot wrong that he had some of the wrong pieces of the puzzle here, and he was almost suppressing the growth and development and talent of some of the right pieces that we're seeing now play big roles. So 100%. He
was suppressing. I think that's the perfect way to say it. Belichick's coaching was holding some of these guys back. Vrabel's coaching and the culture has gotten the best out of them. So I just think that, if Mike Vrabel doesn't win the coach of the year, I mean, shame on the NFL, shame on whoever votes on that award. Yeah. He deserves it 100%. Let's talk a little bit about things from the Denver side, Justin, before we move to around the league. A lot of complaining from the Broncos sideline this week, a lot of beefing about things. And to me, and the thing I want to talk about is what I think was the turning point in this game. And I said it at the time we were texting during the game. Denver passed on the chance to take a 10-0 lead in this game in the second quarter. They put the ball in the hands of their backup quarterback on a 4th and 1. Shame on Sean Payton if you don't know the weather coming to your own stadium. There's no excuse for that. Those 3 points, I didn't realize how bad the weather was going to be. Maybe you did. Even if the weather wasn't an issue, those 3 points in a game like this were critical. I said it at the time, and you know this because I texted it to you. He should be taking this field goal. It was a huge mistake. And then when you add in what happened with the weather, and it makes it even worse. It was a huge mistake that probably cost Denver this game.
Yeah. So one thing that was weird, and I don't know what information they had access to, I personally checked the weather in Denver at around 11 o'clock that morning just to get an idea of what we were looking at. There was no snow on the forecast, right? So something maybe that crept up out of nowhere. Maybe he wasn't anticipating it. I mean, the first half of the game was night and day when you look at the weather in the first and second quarters versus the end of the third and the fourth. So, maybe he got caught with his pants down a little bit with the weather. But regardless of the weather, he has one of the best, if not the best defenses in the league at home. Like you said, he's riding a backup quarterback. He has all the momentum. You got to go up 2 scores. In that situation, you have to, and that was the pivotal sequence that changed the game.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It was the pivotal sequence that changed the whole game. It changed the whole course of the game. What did you think of Jarrett Stidham's performance on Sunday? I mean, we heard so much about Jarrett Stidham going into the game. And, there was so much hype, and then he hits that early pass, and I'm like, whoa, maybe there's something there. He really did almost nothing after hitting that first pass.
Yeah, he did. And I mean, look, he was going up against one of the best defenses in the league. Obviously, once the weather became a factor later in the second half, there was very little he could do. There's very little any quarterback can do in those conditions. But even in the first half, outside of hitting that pass, we really didn't see much from Stidham. I mean, I'll give him this. He didn't completely crap his pants outside of that really bad fumble, which was another pivotal moment in the game. So he didn't play horribly.
I don't know, Justin. There was a couple of times where he was going backwards, and I'm like, what does this guy think he's Caleb Williams here? Like
I think he didn't do as well as we were hyped up to believe he was going to do. But I don't think he was awful. Would you say he was awful in that game?
No, he wasn't awful. He started off and I was really impressed and he looked really good. But I think once the Patriots figured him out, he really I don't think the weather, like even if it didn't snow, I mean, in a sense, I felt like the weather actually benefited Denver because I think if there wasn't for that squall that came in, I think Drake May and the Pats would have figured it out like they have in all year long, and May would have made a few plays and would have won this game. And I don't think Stidham would have. So I think that it mitigated Drake May more than anything, the weather.
I agree. And one thing, to take it back to coaching, and I get it, you're down, you need to score points, it's tough to kick, whatever. But you look at the difference. Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels, they ran the ball in the second half to a point where like it was almost, it almost like was just so wild to watch, just knowing it was going to be run after run after run. But they gave what the weather and the conditions, they took what the weather and conditions gave them, right? Sean Payton, you got one of the best offensive lines in the league that's statistically been at the top of the league throughout the year. They did not lean on the running game as much in the second half as I thought they should have. They still tried to pass the ball through the air. I think even once the weather got a little crappy. And I think that was a bad coaching decision because the Patriots clearly got the memo that, hey, this game's going to be won on the grounds. The Broncos still tried to do a little too much through the air with their backup quarterback in that weather. I thought they should have utilized RJ Harvey a little bit more and that offensive line a little bit more. I know the Patriots defensive front was playing really well, but the key to that game was not to stick with the air attack.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, and they but give the Patriots defense credit for that too,
100%. Yeah,
Milton Williams and Kyrie's Tonga comes into play, and the fact that look, Denver really couldn't run the ball. I mean, the Patriots deserve a lot of credit for that.
They do a
lot of credit.
100%.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about this game on Sunday, Justin, before we move to a few things around the league?
Last thing I want to say real quickly is I want to just mention a guy that I don't think we've mentioned his name a single time on the podcast this year. But, for years we talked about how one of the things that separated the Patriots was, the three levels of the game. They didn't just prioritize offense and defense. They prioritize special teams as well. Right. Yep. Brandon Schooler. Yep. What a performance. I mean, he was absolutely blanket coverage on all those punt returns. He made some really big plays. He's kind of done that all year. I think that was a huge thing, especially in a game where field position was massive. So I just want to give him a shout out because nobody really talks about him, but he is a stud on special teams.
He is a stud on special teams. And is it crazy for me to say that I feel like he's actually getting better?
No.
Especially as the year goes on this year, because I feel like earlier in his career, there were a lot of times where he would overrun the play or he would, take a lot of penalties. And I feel like in the last 6 to 8 weeks, he's really cleaned up his game.
Yeah.
And the guy is a weapon in kick coverage.
He totally is. Yeah. I thought it was real big. Some of those plays he made, just absolutely, allowing almost 0 yards on some of those punt returns. And again, field position in that weather was huge.
What do you think happens, Justin, if Bo Nix had played in this game, if he was healthy?
If Bo Nix was playing, I mean, I think you're at least looking at overtime. I don't know how much better Bo Nix is. Look, once the weather took over, I don't think any quarterback was putting up points. You know what I mean?
I agree with that, yeah.
So how many points better would Bo Nix have been than Stidham? I mean, you could argue it could have been a 10-10, 13-10 game before the weather hit if Bo Nix was in there.
Yeah, I think it would have been a very different game if Nix was in there. But I think the Patriots, they could have done a lot more on offense. They could have taken more chances on offense, and who knows how that would have worked out. I felt like the Patriots probably could have scored more if they wanted to, but I really think part of their game plan was we're not turning the ball over no matter what. We don't believe that Jared Stidham can beat us. So if we just don't make the big mistake, then we're going to win this game. And that proved right. But I feel like if Nix was in there, I think you're going to see a very different game plan from the Pats. How that all teases down, you don't know. The weather was just such a factor. I agree. I'm not sure I ever remember a game where the weather was such a factor. And we've seen some games in bad weather over the year, but it just sounded like that whipping, the way it was being described, the kind of whipping, swirling wind that just came in at just the perfect time. It really was such a factor in stifling both of these offenses.
Yeah.
So who knows? Who knows what happens if Nix plays?
Right. I agree. It was, it was obviously fortunate for the Patriots that he wasn't in there. But look, that's what happens. That's football. Right. And I mean, he got, by the way, real quick, did you hear the rumors that he actually got hurt in the celebration in the locker room after, not on the last play of the game?
I haven't heard that. That's crazy. That would be crazy.
That was a rumor that was going around. I don't know, but they said that he hurt himself in the locker room after, not actually in the last play of the Buffalo game. Who knows? Can
you imagine if that's true? What a disgrace. Oh my God. Yeah. All right. Let's move to around the league. Justin, we're going to have plenty of time to look at this Super Bowl matchup next week when we do next week's episode. It's a long 2 weeks. It's a long 2 weeks. It is. As long as 2 weeks of the year. There's going to be nothing on sports wise except I guess Celtics and Bruins. There is some stuff around the league we should talk about. Yep. Number one is big coaching hires the last couple of days. You liked the decision to move on from Sean McDermott. The Bills have now brought in Joe Brady, their former offensive coordinator. Now he is going to be the head coach. I look at this move and I say, what was the point? You should have just brought back McDermott. That's my feeling. To me, I feel like this is a Josh Allen driven move. Like Allen likes Brady, so Brady's in, McDermott's out. But Justin, your thoughts on the Brady hire?
I don't like it. And I'll tell you why I don't like it. You got one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in the NFL. You got one of the best running backs in the NFL. You got one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. You didn't need to bring in a young offensive head coach in order for this team to be successful. That offense, you would go out and get Josh Allen, a number one receiver, and that offense will take care of itself. They'll be an elite offense in this league. They'll score points. They'll find a way to be good. Okay? What I personally think the Bills needed a Vrabel type, a leader among men who could take control of the locker room and who could turn that defense into a championship caliber defense. Because the Bills defense has really been one of their biggest Achilles heels over the last few years. So I just don't think you solve their problems by bringing Joe Brady. And I think that offense is going to be fine no matter what. Go get him a number one receiver and bring in a Vrabel type who can lead the locker room and get the defense in top shape.
Well, but there was no Vrabel type this year. And I know before you say Mike Tomlin, I don't think Mike Tomlin wants to coach this year. I don't think the Bills were going to give up draft picks to get Mike Tomlin. There was no one for them to go to. And that's why I think this was just a bad decision, an emotional decision by the Buffalo Bills to fire McDermott after they lost a tough game. And that was impulse. That was emotion. And at some point, we talked about the Bills last week. We pointed the finger at Brandon Beane, deserving. We pointed the finger a little bit at Josh Allen for not coming through in big spots, a little bit deserving. I'll tell you who we didn't mention that deserves a lot of criticism for the situation in Buffalo, and that's the owner, Terry Pegula. We just spent a few minutes talking about Robert Kraft and how great Kraft is and how the stability and the decision-making is a huge part of supporting what's happened on the field here. Well, I'm sorry. The owner made an emotional, impulsive decision to fire the coach, not having any real idea where the alternative, was going to be. They interviewed Phillip Rivers this week, Justin.
I know.
It's embarrassing. They interviewed, there was someone else they interviewed that was ridiculous this week. Mike McDaniel. They interviewed Mike McDaniel, right? I mean, come on. And then I think this is more a situation where they looked out there at who was out there, who the coaching candidates were, right? And they realized, oh shit, we just fired Sean McDermott and there's absolutely no one worthy of replacing him. And then they turned to any port in a storm, who is Brady, the guy they know, the guy that probably will do an okay job, the guy that Allen likes. But to me, this is just mismanagement from the Bills ownership of the coaching situation. Yeah,
it was. And, we said last week, just because statistically and historically, they should probably move on from Sean McDermott. They have to be really careful that they don't either go sideways or backwards. It was going to be very difficult for them to take a step forward once they replaced him, especially at the point that they replaced him, which actually brings me to a question I have for you, because this is something that I've never really liked personally. I don't think you should be able to interview and hire coaches until after the season. I don't like the fact that you can interview guys that are still part of playoff runs. This whole interviewing coordinators that still have a job to do to win games, try to win a Super Bowl. I don't like the fact that teams that make it longer in the playoffs and play in the postseason that wind up firing their coach later in the year have a disadvantage when it comes to hiring some of the coaches that become available in the market. I don't know. I wish there was like a grace period where it was like, hey, once the season ends, you can start interviewing and hiring. But until then, you kind of got to wait for the rest of the season to play out. I think the Bills would have been, a total front runner for guys like Harbaugh and Stefanski, and those would have been upgrades in my opinion. But I don't know. I don't like the way that all shakes out.
No, I agree. And I've thought the same thing in another angle you could look at it from. I mean, Clint Kubiak, Seattle's offensive coordinator, should be one of the most coveted names in the coaching carousel this year. But because he's not prevented from taking a job until after the Super Bowl, that really puts him at a huge disadvantage. Right. And I think that there are very few teams, I think, that are going to have the guts to wait until early February or even mid-February, really, if you think about it, to hire a coach. That's just a very uncomfortable place for a franchise to be. And then if somehow something doesn't work out or someone else gets him, then you're really stuck. And of course, for assistant coaches, right now you're putting a staff together in February instead of, it's a tough situation. So I agree with you. There should be some kind of more structure to it because it doesn't feel like totally fair for the teams that make the playoffs if they happen to move on from their coach, or if they have assistant coaches that are coveted on their staff, they're at a huge, huge disadvantage. What did you think, Justin, about the Mike McCarthy hire in Pittsburgh? This is another guy that I know is one of your least favorite coaches.
Yeah, I thought that was just a total backwards step for them. That seemed to me just like almost like a bridge hire. But what's so weird about it is I think the Steelers have had 3 coaches in the last 50 years or something like that, like something crazy, right? Like this is not like the Steelers are not known for being a revolving door of head coaches. And I just don't see how long somebody like Mike McCarthy lasts in Pittsburgh. I mean, they need to bring in a quarterback. They need to bring in and develop a quarterback. I don't think that's going to be McCarthy's specialty. I think he's been average at best in the past. He rode Aaron Rodgers, back to a Super Bowl. I just thought it was a downgrade going from Mike Tomlin to Mike McCarthy.
It's a huge downgrade. It's a huge downgrade for Pittsburgh to go to Mike McCarthy from Mike Tomlin. Look, let's say this. He's 62 years old. So this is like a totally out of character hire for Pittsburgh as a franchise, because every coach they've hired has been a young guy that's then went and stayed with the franchise for at least a decade. Right. And it's like, it's going to be hard to see McCarthy do that. He's a Pittsburgh guy. I believe he has roots in Pittsburgh, which is one thing. And then, I mean, look, we've called the Pittsburgh Steelers the Boston Bruins of the NFL before, because, they're like an above average team that makes the playoffs every year, but in no way, shape, or form are they an actual title contender. Yeah. And this hire is just totally consistent with that. We know Mike McCarthy can win games in the NFL, but he's not a great coach. If I'm the Steelers, I want to find the next Sean McVay. Exactly. I want to find the next Liam Cohen and bring him in to run my program. I don't want to take a guy that, he might get me to 10 or 11 wins, but I know he's not. I know what his ceiling as a coach is, and it's not that guy. It's not that super high guy. So I thought this was a strange hire. I was surprised by it, but at the end of the day, it to me, it just pretty much cements the fact that the Steelers are going to be an average to above average team for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I honestly, I think that's generous. I think this is the type of move that sets them back, because I just think this is going to really hinder their rebuild. I mean, look, they have an aging defense. They're kind of, devoid of weapons on the offense. They seriously need a franchise quarterback. I just don't feel like Mike McCarthy is the right guy for this long-term overhaul in rebuild that they're going to be facing. And it's just so, like you said, uncharacteristic of the Steelers to do something like this. I think this is kind of going to, dictate the fact that for the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to be super, super average, if possibly way below average.
It was the safe conservative move. It was the safe thing to do. Bring in the guy with a name. Yes, he's won a Super Bowl. If you look at Mike McCarthy's career win-loss percentage and playoff appearances and it's very comparable to John Harbaugh, excuse me. So this was the safe move, but it's just I don't know. I don't think it wasn't swinging for the fences. It wasn't playing to win. It was playing to not lose, if you will, from an ownership perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it also, maybe it tells me a little bit more about the whole Mike Tomlin situation, because, the way I viewed it was they basically told Tomlin, hey, we're going to give you the respect of stepping down. If not, we're going to let you go. And he, I thought that was kind of the situation. Then he decided to step down. Maybe it was actually him really wanting to be out and take some time off, because why do you force Mike Tomlin out to go to Mike McCarthy? You know what I mean? Like that's what doesn't make any sense to me. So maybe it says that Mike Tomlin really wanted out of that organization.
Oh, there's no question Mike Tomlin wanted out. I don't think it was mutual. I think Tomlin had enough.
Yeah.
And I think Tomlin is a prideful guy.
Yeah.
I really do. And I think when he's getting booed in his own stadium and people are chanting fire Tomlin in his own stadium, I think he just basically flipped the bird to the Steelers organization and fans and said, you know what, if you think you can do better, then go do better. And I think a lot of those Steelers fans are going to find out this year, Mike Tomlin was a pretty damn good coach.
Great coach. I mean, again, hey, he was there for what, over 15 years?
19,
yeah, almost 2 decades. Never went below 500. Won a Super Bowl. I mean, that's tough to beat. Very tough to beat. So, backwards move for the Steelers. I
wonder too, in one other angle on this, see what you think. How does the Aaron Rodgers thing factor into all this too?
Yeah. I mean, you wonder, is the Steelers' short-term plans to keep Aaron Rodgers around for another season or two? Like, do they think that was like a key to keeping Aaron Rodgers on the roster? Did Aaron Rodgers want Mike McCarthy? Like, I don't know.
Well, my perception was that Rodgers wanted McCarthy gone from Green Bay, that their relationship was acrimonious.
Exactly. So that to me was just super, super weird. And Aaron Rodgers didn't have a bad year, but if your plan moving forward for the next year or two is to keep Aaron Rodgers in that roster, you're just signing yourself up for more of the same old, which is, potentially a playoff berth. That's probably your ceiling. You still haven't solved the franchise quarterback problem. I don't know when the Steelers are going to learn, but after spending years putting a Band-Aid on the quarterback problem, and now doubling down on Aaron Rodgers for another year or two, I think it's going to really slap him in the face. That organization, I think, is in for some tough times.
1,000%. And at this point, Aaron Rodgers is a bridge quarterback.
Yes.
And I don't. If McCarthy and Rodgers have a good relationship, I have no problem with them bringing in McCarthy to lure Aaron Rodgers back, as long as it's known that this is a one-year solution. The Steelers need to find a long-term answer at quarterback. They've needed that for like 7 or 8 years, and they keep kicking the can down the road. So at some point, that organization has to address the quarterback problem. As it stands right now, you bring in Mike McCarthy, you bring back Aaron Rodgers, pencil the Pittsburgh Steelers in for 9 wins next year. And if that's good enough for that organization and that's what they want to be, well, congratulations. You've just bought your ticket to mediocrity.
Exactly. But hey, it wasn't good enough for them this year. So I don't know why. Yep. I don't know why they're going to be any more pleased with it next year. You know what I mean?
You're right. And exactly. If the fans were wanting to fire the coach after this year, you just signed up for the exact same thing next year.
Seriously.
One more quick thing before we wrap it up. I gotta mention this. Shedeur Sanders makes the Pro Bowl. 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Is it just time to just get rid of the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, if it's becoming like a popularity contest amongst like the fans in who are voting a lot of these guys in, it's like, what are we even doing at this point? I mean, the Pro Bowl itself has totally gone to crap. I mean, I remember back in the day, it was at least an entertaining game to watch. Guys were guys were at least somewhat playing. It was somewhat entertaining, but it's just become such a joke. I think now it's turned into like a flag football game or something like that. And, the skills competition. I mean, in no world is Shedeur Sanders a Pro Bowl quarterback. He gets to put that on his resume now, unrightfully so. Again, it's become a popularity contest.
Is it? Because all we've heard about Shedeur Sanders is that he's hated. So it's
he's
just
hated
like
by the organization.
It's become a warm body. Like Mac Jones made a Pro Bowl. This is worse than Mac Jones making the Pro Bowl. I mean, this is so much worse. Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl in 2021 and we laughed. Oh, he threw 21 touchdowns and 12 picks. He made the playoffs and he had a decent year. You know, Shedeur Sanders was one of the worst teams in the league. He had 7 touchdowns, 10 picks, didn't start till week 11, and he somehow makes the Pro Bowl.
Well, do you think though this is a fan overreaction and overcompensation for what we saw from the Browns organization? Because we talked about all year, we said the way they're treating this guy, they must really hate him, right? And I think the rest of the league and the fans saw that, and maybe they said, hey, he got treated so badly by the Browns that we're going to vote him into the Pro Bowl. Like, is that what we're seeing?
He wasn't voted in though. He was a replacement because Drake May made the Super Bowl. So they needed a warm body to go, and they went down the list and no one else wanted to go, right? Like nobody else, a lot of the guys that could have gone say no. So they're left with who will say yes. That's exactly what happened. So like, you know what I think they should do, Justin, at this point? I think they should make a Pro Bowl roster and name an all-star team, a Pro Bowl team, and then play no game. Do no games, have no one throw a football through a giant plastic hoop, have no one throw a football at a target. Just do nothing. There doesn't need to be anything. Just name the Pro Bowl like they do for All Pro and then be done with it. End the charade. Just end it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't give two craps about watching these guys play flag football or doing a skills competition.
The skills competition. They're playing like dodgeball. It's literally ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, my man. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up this episode of the Ultimate Patriots Dr. Football podcast?
No, that's it, man. Look, obviously, like we said, pumped to be in the Super Bowl, super surprised to be here. And like we said at the beginning of the year, you know, our goal coming into 2025 was just to be playing meaningful football at the end of the year. It doesn't get more meaningful than this. So really, really grateful that we got, you know, in 2 weeks, the biggest game of the year to look forward to, and the Patriots are back in it.
Exactly. And look, we'll talk about this more next week when we preview the game, but you know, let's not take for granted this might not happen again for 40 years. I mean, look at how many teams have never even made a Super Bowl. Yep. So the Patriots are so damn lucky that they're in this position yet again.
100%. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, I want to tell everyone, have a great week. If you're in New England or the New England area, good luck with the snow. That's all I can say. Good luck, you know, digging yourself out. We might get hit again Sunday. Is that what I'm hearing? Did you hear that?
I didn't, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, we might get another big one Sunday night. So we're in one of those patterns where it's just like, you know, cold and wet and we're screwed. Yeah. We're screwed. Well, all right, everyone. Thank you, everyone that listened. Appreciate all the support. Find us on Facebook, like us, follow our channel, and we'll catch you next week with another episode of the Ultimate Patriots Podcast. Be good, everyone.